only temporarily disabling the tower. You need to remove each lens individually. Carefully release the hinges.
It's not exactly news that Doom 2016 is a great first-person shooter. I feel like over the years, a lot of people, myself included, have placed it on a pedestal as one of the greats of the boom shooting revival. In case you reside under a rock, I'm talking about the return of the arena shooter and the loosening grasp of realism on the first-person shooter genre. While it is not the first of the revival, it is undoubtedly the most important. Reviving the granddaddy of modern FPS games during a period of stagnation and decline of the genre is a hell of a statement. Pun intended. 6 years and a sequel later, I can't help but rip and tear my way through this game once more for a review. Though to understand what's going on, you need a little bit of context. The time period of 2004 to 2015 was a dark age for the first-person shooter. And I'm not just talking about the general color palette. It was a period in which game budgets soared, many of the AAA conglomerates that we know and love formed, and consumers advocated for realism in their video games. I spent my youth playing quite a few games in the genre. Aside from games I've already covered, they include multiple 007 games, the Halo series, every Call of Duty from 3 to Modern Warfare 3. I've played Battlefields to Bioshocks to Borderlands and everything in between. A lot of these built upon one another to establish effective tropes for the genre. Things like 2-weapon limits, reloading, aiming down sights, sprinting, hiding behind cover, the near obliteration of the boss fight, cinematic set pieces, and so many more. All things done in the name of increasing realism and immersion, but at the cost of mechanical bloat. By 2015, I had pretty much cut most first-person shooters out of my usual gaming rotation because they weren't very fun to play for me. The genre had essentially been stagnant for a decade. In comes Doom 2016, and it is essentially id Software's middle finger to the industry. It purposefully ignores and removes all the tropes I mentioned earlier. Instead, the game encourages you to run around and tear enemies to shreds. Doom 2016 quite literally brought the entire genre back to its roots. But the road to hell is rocky, and development for Doom 2016 was not without its struggles. The development of Doom 2016, then known as Doom 4, was announced to the world by insert joke about the terrifying mind of John Carmack at QuakeCon 2007. The game was going to involve another hell invasion of Earth and would not be like the action horror gameplay of Doom 3. It then mostly went silent except for showing off a secret trailer and some leaked screenshots. It wasn't until a 2013 Kotaku expose by the Master of Connections, Jason Schreier, that the world began to learn about the details of Doom 4. Rumors of development hell circling the studio were hard confirmed. Doom 4 was not going to be anything like Doom 3. Instead, it was apparently going to be Doom of Duty Hellblazers. Developers at id were criticizing just about every aspect of the project, including the obligatory vehicle scene. And this was after development had been restarted in 2011 after Doom 4 had been neglected in favor of the smash hit Rage. That game gets a bad rap for good reasons, but I still enjoyed my run of it back in the day. The basic gist of the situation is the development team of Doom 4 liked their pre-reboot build more than their current one they were working on. And they thought the pre-reboot build sucked. There's a lot of talk about office politics, mismanagement by studio leadership, and more morale crushers. There were rumors ZeniMax was even threatening to put its foot down and make id develop video game engines into eternity. Now, the following segment is speculation backed by some facts, so take it with a grain of salt. But from an outside view, it appears that this expose was crucial in the creation of Doom 2016. For starters, it essentially forced the development team to start from scratch again. John Carmack would leave id in November of the same year to commit full-time to his work at Oculus Rift. Carmack would later be a central figure in an intellectual property lawsuit, ZeniMax vs. Oculus, in which ZeniMax claimed Carmack broke NDA and stole their VR code. The point I'm trying to get at here is Carmack may have been part of the problem with Doom 4. I mean, we are talking about the guy who tore down the walls of the id offices so he could make sure his humans were working efficiently. The guy has his idiosyncrasies. But I think this runs deeper than some kind of blood feud between a studio founder and a parent company. Every id game since Quake 2 has pushed graphical innovations over gameplay. This causes them to serve more as tech demos for Carmack's fancy game engines than proper games. All I need to do is compare Doom 3 to Prey 2006 to prove my point. Both games are running on the same engine, but Prey seems to have more of a creative emphasis to Doom 3's technical push. I think Carmack's mere presence in the company ensured that id's games would always be focused on creating more complicated 3D graphics than creative projects. A consequence of his departure not long after yet another reboot of development might have been a reprioritization of gameplay over graphical fidelity. Of course, this is all speculation, and I'm working off assumptions that may be false, so I don't know, bro. What I do know is that the good people at id went hard at work for the next few years to create this amazing fuck you of a video game. Faith was restored at the secret trailer screening at QuakeCon 2014 and my own at E3 2015 when they showed gameplay for the first time. The multiplayer beta right before release might have ruffled some feathers though. Hey, this is FutureBones. During the production of this video, some controversy regarding id Studios head Marty Stratton and Mick Gordon emerged. That's a story for the Doom Eternal video, but I felt it appropriate to at least acknowledge it here. Back to your regularly scheduled programming. But presentations come first. Visually, Doom 2016 looks like it could have released yesterday. I love the visual vibe of this game, from the rooms of industrial machinery to the miserable pits of hell. There are so many little details to every part of the environment that I'm often in awe. Like this scene here with the lighting and reflections just looks so good. Chef kiss, mwah, mamma mia. Each level is visually distinct and reflects the different areas of the UAC facility on Mars that the Doomslayer must navigate. These levels are open-ended with secrets to be found in the form of power-ups, collectibles, weapons, and more. Of course, they also feature more than a few arenas to perform shotgun exorcisms. I really like how the arenas are laid out because they emphasize movement and verticality with object and platform placement. The demons themselves are all great takes on classic designs. My personal standouts are the Revenant and the Hell Knight. I'm biased towards the Hell Knight because he's modeled after the Hell Knights of Doom 3, which coincidentally was my first Doom game. More on that another day. I'm running Doom 2016 at close to the highest possible graphical settings in part to show off how great this game looks. However, this does come at a cost performance-wise. I experienced a number of frame skips and mistimings during my playthrough. It's a mild annoyance, but I know it can be a deal breaker for some. Apparently, the skipping is caused in part by the Razer Chroma integration. Turning it off helped some, but it did not fix the problem outright. Body collisions also seem to have something wonky going on with them. More than a few times I had a body fling itself into the air or become stuck in a wall. Neither of these things are outright negatives for me, but I felt they were common enough to mention. The sound of Doom 2016 is absolute god tier. Enemies are meaty when they come apart in the hands of the Slayer. Weapons are loud with the optimal amount of bass for impact. My personal standout is the Super Shotgun. The audio engineering in this game is insane, with the music timing itself with your glory kills and subtly drawing you into Doom's rhythm. And it's all thanks to the actual mad genius Mick Gordon. The music is best described as industrial electronic hell or doomcore if you are unoriginal. Prior to composing Doom 2016, Gordon had been doing audio and sound work for hits like Destroy All Humans 2 and Hot Dog King. That was before he moved on to more modern classics like the Wolfenstein reboots and the first 2 seasons of the Killer Instinct reboot. I normally don't go too deep into the music side, but I actually have a bit to talk about here. Most of it comes from a really great GDC talk by Gordon himself. In it, he explained his process for creating the music. Originally, it was almost completely synth-based with no guitar work. No guitars was specifically requested by id. But Gordon realized the soundtrack was missing something, so he slowly snuck more and more guitars in there until the nerds at id had to agree that it was too rad to leave out. Especially once he had interpolated a guitar and a chainsaw together. Most of the music was actually made by sending sine waves through a sound array Gordon had built. He basically daisy-chained a bunch of effects pedals and audio equipment together to see what would happen. To be fair, it created some completely insane sounds that I listen to this day. Honestly, if you've been on the internet in the last 6 years and haven't heard BFG Division in some form or another, please tell me, because you need more metal in your diet. Perhaps my favorite tidbit with the music comes from what people discovered when digging into the game files. Gordon couldn't help himself and may have inserted images of pentagrams and sixes into the wave files that can only be seen on a spectrograph. There might be a hidden message somewhere in there if you care to find it too.
Now, do you know how many news websites wrote about that one? Friggin' none!
This man is an absolute treasure. I could spend forever geeking about the music, but I really need to talk about the gameplay at some point. Actually playing Doom 2016 is some of the most fun I've ever had with a video game. Rip meets tear and bisects at radical when you cut swaths through the demonic hordes. There is no need for sprinting. Your move speed is already faster than Usain Bolt in Beijing. Nor is there a need for reloading. Instead, empty a weapon before sticking another in the face of the closest demon. Well, there's one exception, but we'll get there. The gameplay of Doom 2016 cuts out most of the superlative actions that have been attached to the genre over the years. I've often heard this described as a return of 90s game design, but I disagree. It's more like a new branch that has formed on the evolutionary tree of video games. This style of game never truly went away, it was simply not in the spotlight anymore. Arena FPS games have evolved into the present day to emphasize movement over almost all else. You only need to look to Doom Eternal and its addition of the dash to see further evolution. But I'm getting ahead of myself, and that's a video for another day. As I alluded to before, Doom 2016 is the deconstruction the FPS genre needed. These games are supposed to be cathartic. I'm glory killing enemies for health and chainsawing them for ammo. There's an entire arsenal strapped to my back. Literal demons from hell are out to conquer our reality, and I'm the only thing that can stop them. Realism be damned, this shit is rad. The level design is particularly genius with their open-ended nature and propensity to be jam-packed with secrets. There are even alternative paths that will eventually funnel the player toward the same destination. Of course, there's a number of corridors you're going to walk through, but even the vents can be hiding things. These include player upgrades, weapon upgrades, collectible action figures, and levers to secret levels. The secret levels, of course, being actual levels of OG Doom with modern weapons and enemies. The enemies are returning faces for the most part. Zombies, imps, possessed soldiers, Hell Knights, Barons of Hell, Pinkies, Cacao Demons, Revenants, and hell, even the Cyber Demon shows up to go a couple rounds. They all have their own distinct AI and patterns to learn. You'll even find that some weapons are better than others at dealing with specific enemies. That roster is also fairly standard for a Doom game. Pistol, shotgun, machine gun, plasma rifle, chain gun, rocket launcher, and the BFG. The addition of a railgun also helps to balance out the weapon roster with a heavy energy weapon, although the super shotgun is still king amongst all weapons. It will mist low tier enemies with a single shot. It has the stopping power to take down mid tiers in a few shots, and that is before you master the super shotgun. Each weapon modification has their own special skill unlocked once you successfully perform a challenge a certain number of times. The mastery skill for the super shotgun is the ability to fire twice before having to reload. The super shotgun is the only weapon with mechanic and is expressly done to balance the weapon. See, it only takes 4 blasts from the super shotgun to melt a Hell Knight, and the time it takes to kill them is halved with the upgrade. I can only imagine the glory that would be a super shotgun without reloading. Now, despite all the good I've talked, I do have some criticisms for Doom 2016. I think my biggest one is that the game is a level or two longer than it needed to be. By the 10th level of 13, you have pretty much seen everything that the game has thrown at you. The only truly new content that remains are the bosses. I'm also not a fan of the equipment the game keeps giving you. There are 2 types of grenade and a hologram. I barely ever use them, and when I did, I felt like I was throwing off my rhythm. They honestly feel more like an afterthought rather than a proper game mechanic. I personally think that the rune challenges are a bit much. Each level after 3 will have these glowing green runes. They will transport you to the rune challenge dimension. You will be presented with a specific challenge like kill enemies with barrels only using a pistol. As a reward, you will receive a rune that can go into one of 3 rune slots. The rune abilities include picking up ammo from farther away, infinite ammo above a certain armor value, and faster glory kills among others. It really feels like an unneeded piece of complexity and padding. I think that many of the rune abilities could have been better off as player or weapon upgrades. The extra level of customization allows you to create your optimal slayer, but is that really necessary? The only rune trial that I always take is the one that increases your mobility in midair. Everything else feels like the SAT word of the day: superfluous. The story of Doom 2016 feels like another middle finger. There's an entire narrative and deeper lore to be discovered, but none of it is necessary to understand what is happening in the game. One of the very first things the Doomslayer does is destroy the display that Optimus Prime is talking through. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention the voice cast. There are a total of 3 speaking characters in the game: the robotic Dr. Samuel Hayden, the demonic Dr. Olivia Pierce, and the facility AI Vega. They all do a superb job, but Darren DePaul does a fantastic impression of Peter Cullen's Optimus Prime.
The destruction of the Argent Tower is devastating, but I am committed to helping you close the portal.
Therefore, he is my favorite. I really don't have all that much else to say about the story. It's serviceable for moving the events of the game forward. Honestly, it's nothing more than window dressing for the slaughter if you don't care about the deeper lore. Like how the UAC is a wonderful place to work. Just make sure to not anger any demons so that your corpse will be useful to science. And as your advocate level increases, you will gain more knowledge into the true inner workings of the UAC. Moloch be praised. I could do a spoiler breakdown, but I don't see the need, and there's plenty more of the game I want to talk about. Like the multiplayer. Surprisingly, 6 years and the sequel later, the multiplayer of Doom 2016 is still active. Sure, I was only able to find games in one playlist, but I'll take that as a win. The multiplayer is surprisingly in-depth and the complete opposite of what I would have expected coming from the campaign. This is not a deconstruction of the multiplayer FPS. Rather, this is the bastard child of Call of Duty and Halo with a coat of Doom paint. There's all kinds of progression in the form of weapons, armors, paint jobs, runes, taunts, and more to unlock. Thankfully, the health system from the campaign remains. Upon receiving damage, there's no waiting for heals. You have to have agency to search out some med packs. There are a number of queues where you can try to find a match, but team play was the only one where I could consistently get a match going. This is a playlist that has all kinds of team games that are essentially one-to-one copies of common modes with new names. Soul Harvest is kill confirmed, and Clan Arena is SWAT. Prove me wrong. I was able to play a couple of these modes, but honestly, nothing is as fun as Team Deathmatch. Which is all the more a shame that I couldn't get a match going on the dedicated TDM playlist. The most unique part of Doom's multiplayer is the spawning of 3 modifiers in any particular match. The first is a chainsaw. There's nothing more satisfying than cutting a man down midair. The second is quad damage, borrowed from Quake. It'll spawn on particular maps, and when the holder is killed, it will drop on the ground. Another player can come along, pick up the power-up, and blast their foes during the remaining time. The last modifier is the ability to transmogrify into a demon. You are then able to go on a rampage through the enemy team. Often, who got this power-up determined the outcome of a match. The only demon I was able to capture footage of was the Revenant, but I still had a blast with it. Overall, the multiplayer itself could be a good time sink for those interested, but understand that the population is small. SnapMap is Doom's attempt to merge Forge mode and a scenario editor into one feature. It's also somehow separate from the main game because my game relaunched when I booted it for the first time. The editor itself is incredibly complex. It comes with pre-built rooms, but everything about the innards of those rooms is up to you. It's really easy to take a template and just go from there. In 10 minutes, I was able to make this piece of shit map. There are modifiers for AI behavior, scripting, and so much more. You can easily create your own Doom 2016 WOD. Despite my poor attempt, you can make some pretty incredible looking maps. Someone even basically remade all of the first episode of the OG Doom using classic assets. This in itself could add a ton of replayability. In theory. Because I had never touched this mode prior to this review. I had never felt the need as the marketing presentations were disinteresting. I came to fight demons. I did not come here to build. That still stands true because outside of this review, I will likely never touch the mode again. Which is a shame. Someone at id put a ton of work into something that I think most players will end up ignoring. Ultimately, that work could have gone elsewhere. I would have loved to have seen more demons or weapons in exchange for no SnapMap. In conclusion, Doom 2016 is the definitive return of the arena shooter. The campaign is some of the most fun I've ever had with an FPS. It is pure, unadulterated demon-slaying catharsis distilled into a video game. The extra modes are a tad lackluster, but I think the campaign is good enough to make up for the deficit. However, this game is beginning to show its age, and there are technical issues to be found. I personally recommend Doom 2016 if you're able to look past them. It's $20 on Steam, and I think it's worth the full price. But as always, if you can grab something on sale, I will always recommend that instead. I'll come back to Doom one day, but I have some mountains to conquer in the meantime. Thanks for watching.